Oh, hello, I didn't see you there. My name's Liam Lochran, and I'm a film production major at the University of Southern California. I get a lot of comments on my YouTube videos and emails from prospective film majors asking me about the college application process, and if there are any tips or tricks I learned while applying to schools that might be helpful. I know the college application process can be extremely stressful and anxiety-inducing, so I thought I'd make this video to share the things that I learned along the way, as well as what I feel film schools are looking for in applicants. I'm incredibly lucky to get to go to this school, and I want to help future students in any way that I can. So without further ado, this is how to get into film school.
You've been running through my mind, and I've been thinking that it's just about time we get together, so come on.
So the first thing that everyone starts to freak out about when applying to schools is grades. I don't think you always have to have the best grades, especially when applying to more artistic majors, but I think something that is important is showing growth. If you were someone that didn't necessarily get the best grades the first year or two of high school, but over time learned to study and apply yourself and showed improvement during junior and senior year, I think that says a lot about you as a student. This is definitely the person I was in high school, and I think it speaks volumes to your character to show an academic uptrend through steadily improving grades than someone who did well early on grade-wise, but declined in later years due to a lack of motivation. Next, there are the standardized tests like the ACT and SAT. My advice for these is to take them as many times as possible. I think I took the ACT 6 times. These tests aren't really designed to measure your intelligence. They're more of a game, and if you learn how to play the game, you can learn how to get good at it and definitely improve your scores. Finally, there's the common application essay and school-specific essays and questionnaires. These essays are to show the school who you are as a unique individual. My best advice for these, and a common theme throughout the video, is to show, don't tell. If you want to articulate how hardworking and dedicated you are, don't write that you were on the baseball team and worked really hard and practiced every day, but rather that you got up early in the morning to lift weights and stayed late after practice when the rest of the team went home to work on your pitching. Your actions speak to who you are as a person, and you will seem more relatable and accomplished by demonstrating your value through telling a story, letting the reader draw the conclusion that you are a hard worker in comparison to just telling them so. There are two major components to the film school application: written material and a visual sample. We'll get to the visual sample in a minute, but as for written material, most film schools have an additional personal essay, a film writing prompt such as a dialogue scene or script outline, and a creative resume. For all of the writing samples, make sure that you are always telling a story, even if the essay question is about your own life. Find ways to make your unique voice shine through, because at the end of the day, these schools aren't looking for the kids with the nicest cameras or the most cinematic shots. They're looking for future storytellers. For the personal essay, start small. Think of an event or story from your past that speaks to your values and represents your character. Describe it in detail, and then speak to how it influenced your ideological views of the world. Don't just say that you want to be a filmmaker. Show why you have to tell stories in your life. When writing scripts and outlines, don't stress too much. Schools aren't looking for you to write the next Hollywood blockbuster, but try to paint a picture of a unique character or world that you have some authority to speak about. When I applied to USC, I wrote a dialogue scene between an injured police officer and a 5-year-old who accidentally picked up the officer's distress signal on his toy radio. Honestly, I don't think it was very good, but it had clear characters with motivations and a story. I would worry least about the creative resume. This portion is just so schools can see you're passionate about the craft of filmmaking. If you've had that summer internship at a production company, some on-set experience, or started a movie club at your high school, this is a great place to put those experiences. But if all you have is the 5 short films you and your friends made, that's totally fine, as long as you do your best to show your dedication. Finally, there's the visual supplement. supplement. This is what I think is one of the most important parts of the film school application, or at least the strongest part of my application when I applied to schools. It's your opportunity to show who you are and what you can do as a filmmaker by making a short narrative film, usually up to 5 minutes in length. Most schools have a 5-minute time constriction, but some require a 2 to 3 minute long film. A lot of applicants end up creating a single 5-minute short film and then cut it down to be 2 to 3 minutes when applying to schools that have a shorter time restriction. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this because if your 5-minute short film can work as a 2-minute film, it should probably be 2 minutes long. When I applied to film schools, I decided to make 2 application videos. One 5-minute short about a man who kidnaps a baby only to form an unlikely bond with his infant companion, and a shorter 2-minute film about a pizza delivery boy that encounters a nasty surprise. That way, depending on what school I was applying to, I would have a short film that filled the allotted time slot without having to cut out any key plot points or add extraneous footage to fill time. If the idea of creating 2 short films seems daunting to you, make sure to give yourself plenty of time. I started filming my videos the summer before application season began. So that's an overview of the visual sample, but let's break it down even further. So there's definitely a toxic element in the filmmaking community that I often find myself falling victim to, where you see other people making films and you think to yourself, if only I had that camera, or if only I had access to that location, then I could make my film. And I think this is just the complete wrong mindset that filmmakers should have, especially new filmmakers. You should write for the things, people, and places that you already have access to. And if you use those things right, then they'll be your unfair advantage. I get a lot of questions about how I found a baby, adult male actor in restaurant to make Shotgun, or how I found a moped, an old house, and a grandma to shoot Delivery, but those weren't things I went to go find after I wrote a script. They were what I started with. In the case of Shotgun, I had a newborn baby cousin, and my brother was home for the summer, so I created a story around them. My family eats at the same breakfast place every Sunday, so we just asked the owner if we could film really quickly during slow hours. For Delivery, I had the idea for a fun opening tracking shot, and I knew that one of my friend's dads had a visually interesting moped that we could borrow. After that, it was just a matter of convincing my grandma to let us cover her in fake blood and shoot in her house for a day or 2. Look at the things, locations, and people around you, and create a story based on that, not what other people have. The story is the foundation of your film, and everything else is built around it, so make sure to spend some serious time crafting a solid narrative before you start shooting. Remember, these schools are looking for future storytellers, and story is all about change, transformation, and metamorphosis, so make sure that at least one of your characters undergoes some sort of change throughout the story. It doesn't have to be a 180-degree shift. 30 is fine, but if your protagonist is exactly the same in the beginning of your film as they are in the end, then you might want to go back to the drafting phase and think about how your character can change, because transformation is what leads to the most gratifying stories. And I know what you're thinking. What a powerful visual metaphor it is to have the section of the video about how stories, the foundation of your film, take place in the basement. But is it worth it to move everything down here? Another quick note on story before we move on. Keep it simple. You only have 5 minutes, or in some cases 2, so come up with a story that lives in the allotted time and execute it to the best of your abilities. Also, limit your dialogue. Good dialogue is super hard to write. I still can't figure it out, and chances are you'll only have access to family and friends that aren't necessarily the best actors to be in your film. It's a lot easier to make someone look good at acting if they don't have to say anything than if they have pages and pages of dialogue to perform. This will also force you to show and not tell even more, as not having dialogue makes you rely on visuals, sound design, music, editing, and all the other tools in your filmmaker toolbox to convey characters' thoughts and motivations, rather than them just telling you how they feel through dialogue. Should we haze it up? Let's haze it up. So another element of filmmaking that often deters new filmmakers is not having access to a nice camera. If this is you, I want you to reach into your pocket and pull out the HD camera that's in there. Problem solved. Get the best camera you have access to, whether it be through your school, your dad's handy cam he uses to film your sister's soccer games, or your smartphone, and start making your film. There are applications that have been shot on iPhones that get into USC, and others shot on $20,000 cinema cameras that don't. It's not about camera quality, but rather how you communicate your story visually. Again, show, don't tell. Use your visuals as a chance to reveal information about your characters, get into their thoughts and feelings, or crack a joke. Another way to use visuals to set yourself apart from the competition is to think about how your film starts and the first thing your audience sees. The adjudicators watching these films go through hundreds a day, so the sooner you can convey to them that your film is worth spending the next 5 minutes watching, the better, and the less likely they will be to click away. I tried to do this by starting each of my films off with an engaging opening tracking shot set to upbeat music that reveals key information about the protagonist. In delivery, we learn our main character is a pizza delivery boy with a positive outlook on life. And in Shotgun, the childlike association the audience has with Toys R Us is juxtaposed with a gruff-looking man that haphazardly parks his car as he finishes a cigarette. Both of these shots leave the audience with questions and make you want to know what happens next. At the end of the day, I just wanted to say that everything I've said is my own opinion, and I hope after watching this video there are a thing or two that are helpful to you. Everyone's process is different, and I just wanted to share some of the things I wish I had known when I was applying to film schools. I don't know everything, and it would be great if I could ask people that go to film school now what they wish they had known when they were applying to schools, but oh wait, I can do that.
So I thought that the video submission was everything. I put a lot of pressure on myself to make some sort of groundbreaking cinematic masterpiece that would blow Hollywood away. I would do the thing where you go on YouTube and you search up, USC film submission 2017 and see what that was all about. But actually, your video making skills don't matter as much as the story you're trying to tell.
Really just focus on making the film about a good story, making the film about something that means a lot to you, because that to them matters a lot more. Because at the end of the 4 years, they know that a lot of these students will come out of the film school with the same level of technical experience. So they're not really looking for an abundance of technical expertise in your films. They're really looking for a good story.
Never use the word passion, never use the word determined. It's like, think of it as like exposition in films. It's like telling them what they want to hear. I recommend showing them rather than telling them. And that can be in the form of a story. Obviously for your visual sample, you want to show a side of yourself, but even in your personal statement, I think that if you just tell a story, you guys are all storytellers, and you're applying to a film school where they tell stories. So tell a story about yourself that shows you're ambitious, or shows you're passionate. They don't care that you love movies. They know you love movies.
In my own experience applying as an Asian American kid from the Midwest, at first I found myself getting really trapped in the idea of writing about Asian American representation, and while that's really important to me, I was starting to let that define who I was as an applicant. And I think there's so many different other aspects of me that I think are really cool. Like I'm a musician, athlete, and all these other things that I decided to write about, which I think helped shape who the school saw me as. And I think that really helped, because a lot of people are into Asian American representation, and how do you stand out from that? That's the question I ask myself. Like, how do I build from that platform?
There's a big emphasis on diversity, which is so cool and so awesome. But if you're someone like me who's not terribly diverse, I come from Vermont, small town, a white guy who's straight. I got a ginger hair, which might make me a little different than everyone else, but I fit pretty much the stereotypical mold of a filmmaker. If you're in my position, or if you're worried about your own voice and not being diverse enough, you have to come to an understanding and appreciation for who you are and accept who you are.
People put so much pressure on these short 4 years of college, but you have to keep perspective of the big picture. This is just the beginning. Work your butt off and make the most of it, yes, but don't stress yourself out to the point where you don't feel like yourself, because being yourself is the most important part of being a filmmaker.
I wish I knew that everybody worried as much as I did. My entire senior year of high school was spent worrying about where I'd go and what I'd get into, and I was worried that I wouldn't have enough extracurriculars or I wouldn't be in enough clubs to get into anything, and so I lost sight of the actual joy and art of making movies and being creative. So I spent so much time worrying about like the image that I'd present of myself that I forgot about the actual movies. So for the first few projects I worked on and submitted, they felt really empty and just really shallow because my heart wasn't in it at all. And I think schools like to see passion, and they like to see what you bring to the table. I wish I knew that schools are looking for people who can tell a story uniquely and not just people who can tell a story, period. I think we can all tell stories. I think we do it every day, and that's not inherently interesting in and of itself. But talking about the things you love and making movies that excite you, not just making movies that feel empty and shallow because you're worried about impressing someone, that's what lets your voice as an artist really come through. And I think that's the sort of thing that schools are looking for.
Don't try to be like someone else. Don't say that I want to make the next Parasite. Don't say that I want to make the next Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Say that I want to make my story because it means a lot to me, and I think it will mean a lot to other people. That to them will really, really set you apart.
Also, having time to go back and look at what you've written and reread and rewrite will make your writing so much better, so that time is definitely a lifesaver. Another piece of advice I'd give is don't write what you think the admissions committee wants to see. Instead, write something unique about your own life and turn that into a story.
The one big thing I wish I had known going into film school is when and where I am best at writing. I've realized over the course of 2 full years of school, of college, that I am the best writer at around 10:30 p.m. in the evening by myself, completely isolated from everyone else. I really think it's so important that you know those things about yourself for 2 reasons. The first reason is it allows you to create the best work. If you know when you're the most vulnerable, you're going to be the most authentic, and authenticity is so key in writing. I would take the time to think about where and when you're the best writer, and I think that will just set you ahead of where I am so much more if you come into film school with that in mind.
In a lot of my film classes in general, one thing that they really emphasize is character. USC doesn't really go for plot-driven stories. They want more character-driven stories. So I think it would be even more impressive, even at this stage, if you focused your scripts, if you focus your films on character-driven stuff, making really, really, really strong character choices. Do the audiences really like this character? Do the audiences really not like this character? Is a character really, really this way? Is a character really, really that way? Making those really strong choices now will certainly set you apart from so many other student films.
When I was applying to colleges, I wasn't specifically looking at film schools, let alone art schools. At the time, I was really interested in engineering and computer science because that's what I was doing in high school, and I was doing design and photography on the side. USC obviously was on my radar since I grew up as that football Trojan kid. And obviously my parents went there and my aunt went there. And I knew they had a great film school. And at the time, in junior and senior year, I was making a lot of short films on my own. But unfortunately, my high school didn't really have a good arts program. So again, like I said, it was stuff I was doing on the side, sort of as little passion projects. Of the 15 schools I applied to, USC is the only one that I applied to for a non-engineering major. Yeah.
It doesn't really matter how much of a reach school you think it is, no matter what, you have a shot. I got denied from schools that I thought were a total lock, and I got accepted to schools I never thought in a million years I'd get into. And I thought, it's not worth it, I'd never get in, why spend $50 or $70 applying? But thank God I did, because now I'm at a school doing what I love, and it never would have happened unless I went out and actually tried.
Half of the schools that I applied to were for musical theater, and the other half were undecided schools for my major who just didn't offer a great musical theater program. And I decided, for those, why not just try something like cinema studies, the supplement process was much more in-depth than I was expecting, and you needed 5 minutes worth of a video portfolio, and I was like, what? I've made one film in my life. I don't like the story of it that much, and I just had no idea what to do just because I was so inexperienced in film. I had so little to show for. I've never worked on other sets. And so, very last minute, I put together my 5 favorite moments of Pin, the one short film I had made, and, you know, put the prettiest shots together in 5 minutes, colored it pretty, and then wrote my heart out in all the supplements. And I don't know, the stars aligned.
While you're waiting for the school decisions to come in, just kind of recognizing that anything can happen is important, because when you set expectations of what the results are going to be for each college, then that's not going to do you any good if those results don't turn out the way that you thought. There's thousands of people that applied, and as personal as art can be, you also can't really take the decisions too personally. Regardless of what the decisions will be, whether they're good or bad, expected or unexpected, as long as you put everything that you possibly can into your application, then whatever happens, you'll know that you did your absolute best.
You don't need super fancy, expensive equipment. You don't even need the best actors. And a film that looks good doesn't actually mean it's a good film. It's all about story, story, story. And if you haven't found your storytelling voice yet, I wouldn't worry about it. That's what you'll get to hone in on and craft at film school.
It's not all about the school you get into. Film school is great because you get to work with people who love the same things you do, and most people don't come from places where there's a lot of people who like making movies. And so what's so great about film school is that you get to be collaborative, and you get to learn what it's like to work with people to make a single something. And you can get that same education in a number of different places. So just because you don't get into the one thing you thought you were going to get into, it's not the end of the world.
Let yourself go with the flow and make sure that whatever you're doing is something that really makes you happy.
If there's anything I've learned from going to film school, it's that you don't have to go to film school to be a filmmaker. It's really about how dedicated you are and your persistence in making content that speaks to your beliefs and interests. Our society is obsessed with rankings, and those that try to assign greater or less value to art, whether it be through Oscar nominations or which films got who into film school, are missing the point. Make movies about the things you love, and other people that love those things will love them too.
Yeah.